Hey, what's going on, guys? Rygo here from Kite. So I'm just here with our youngest team rider, Logan, and a lot of you probably don't know this, but in Michigan during the winter, along our coast, we actually get a bit of shelf ice when the lakes start to freeze, and they don't fully freeze over. We get a lot of that ice on the shoreline there. And this weekend we had a bit of a thaw, and some of that broke up, and some of the local riders, Logan included, got out and got on the water.
Yeah, I mean, the water temp was like low 30s, and the air temp was probably around like 45, and it was I was sweating. I was absolutely sweating. It was insane. It was absolutely sick.
Yeah, you know, when you're in Michigan, you kind of get some of that cold blood. But anyway, it got me thinking about just how some riders, get pretty hardcore and get out there in the cold water and just, get thirsty for those sessions. So this week I wanted to do a video on the differences between kiteboarding in warm water versus cold water. So let's get to it. So I think it goes without saying that kiteboarding in the winter is pretty different from kiteboarding in the summer. It takes a lot more grit, a lot more preparation, and quite a bit more gear to get out there and make it happen. In this video I'm going to break down what to be aware of, a few rules to abide by, and what kind of gear you need to get out there. So the first major difference is pretty obvious. You're going to need to keep warm in the winter. In the summer you might be able to get away with a pair of board shorts or a 3 or even a 2mm wetsuit. You might just be out there wearing something like this, say a neoprene hood, just to keep some of the chill off. But most of the year we don't all have that luxury of being able to ride in board shorts, especially here in Michigan in January. Now before I break down the gear, I just wanted to go over some cold water basics with you. In the summer there's quite a bit of knowledge needed for understanding the weather and the wind directions and all those things, but in the winter there's a whole other layer that you need to understand before you even think of going out. So before you gear up and venture out into the cold, I would say there's some absolute prerequisites to getting on the water. I would start by just asking yourself a few questions. What's my ability level? Do I know how to recognize the warning signs of hypothermia? And am I able to stay situationally aware? So the first question to ask yourself is, what's my ability level? Now with cold water kiting, it's really reserved for those more experienced riders, and the reason being for that is if you're new, chances are you're going to spend more of your session in the water than on top of it. But aside from that, you just need to know how to handle yourself, what to do in emergency situations, and just be able to stay calm and be very familiar with kiteboarding before you go. And concerning newer riders and water temperatures, I would advocate that, with a good wetsuit, you stick above 60 degrees Fahrenheit with a water temp, just because crashing is a part of the learning process. And even for those advanced riders out there, crashing is actually pretty fun as long as you're not catching an edge. So during the summer, that's probably one of the first major differences is, you're going to be a lot more inclined to try new things, whereas in the winter, it's more of an adrenaline rush. You're having fun, you might be jumping. Chances are you're not going to try anything new because getting a cold water flush in 30 degrees is pretty shocking and not really that fun. Something else to consider, one of the major differences between kiteboarding in the summer and kiteboarding in the winter is your energy levels. So in the summer when it's warm, your energy levels are high, you're ready to go, you're feeling good, the water feels good. Like I said, even when you crash, it's pretty refreshing. It's just a pleasant experience. Whereas in the winter, aside from the initial adrenaline rush that you're going to get on the water, it can be really draining. Cold weather can actually fatigue you, so you might not quite have as much energy on the water. Your arms are going to get tired faster, your limbs are going to feel it, your muscles are going to feel it more. So cold water does, just like a battery, it's going to drain your energy faster, and that's something to consider. What's your physical condition as well? If you're not in really good shape, winter kiteboarding actually might be pretty taxing on you. And all that said, I like to think of summer kiteboarding as fun, but winter kiteboarding, it's really more of an adventure. You're trekking out with your friends on a cold beach. It's the middle of January. There's snow on the ground. All the beachgoers are gone. You have the beach to yourself. It's kind of a different experience, and it's really fun. And just one of those elements of our sport that I really love. It's really an all-season, all-terrain sport. You can go out on the water until it freezes over, and then a lot of guys will go out and go snow kiting on the ice. So it just opens up a lot more new terrain, a lot more new experiences, and it's just such a multifaceted sport. And just getting out there in the cold on these kind of crazy days, it's just a whole new element to the sport that just makes it exciting and fun. So moving on to something a little more serious, the next question that you should ask yourself is, are you familiar with the signs of hypothermia? And this usually starts with shivering, maybe dull or numb limbs. It progresses to slurred speech. Just to name a few, you could have cold or pale skin. Later signs might include confusion, maybe even combativeness, fatigue, and eventually a loss of consciousness. And I would advocate that at the very first signs, likely even if you're shivering, you should really get out of the water as fast as possible. And I'm not telling you this to put the fear in you. It's more so just about having a respect for the water, respect for yourself, and just respect for the conditions. When it's cold out, you just need to be aware of these things and don't take chances. Like I said, kiteboarding in the summer, it's fun, it's relaxed. You need to consider basic things like, is there a storm coming? Pretty obvious, don't go on the water. But in the winter, sometimes it's not as obvious. For example, hypothermia can actually happen in the summer. Maybe you're out riding and it's not that cold, but you were ill prepared. The water temp might be a bit colder. You just had a pair of board shorts, but hey, you can manage that, right? 40 minutes on the water, you actually might start experiencing some signs of hypothermia. So just be cognizant of this, be respectful, and don't take chances. So the last question to ask yourself before you go out kiting in the cold is, are you able to stay situationally aware? Can you properly assess the dangers and be objective about what's happening? And it really just comes down to being mindful and having a plan of attack and assessing things correctly. I really advocate that you have a plan to get warm fast. First of all, never ever ride alone. You really shouldn't be riding alone in the summer, and I know a lot of people do. I've done it myself. But in the winter, you absolutely should not go on the water without a buddy. But first of all, it makes it more fun, but you just need somebody to keep you accountable and make sure you're safe if something does go wrong. Aside from that, just have a plan to get warm. Keep the car heated, have a warm blanket ready, make sure somebody knows that you're out kiteboarding. And as well, just be smart. So don't get yourself in a situation that you can't get out of. For example, if you're kiteboarding on shelf ice, that can actually be dangerous in itself. You don't want to fall through the ice and get trapped. Maybe the ice is a couple feet off the water from where the water actually breaks in. Like you can see in this video here, they're jumping off the ice. And where they're at, it's not incredibly deep, and it'd be pretty easy to get out of. But for yourself, just make sure you don't wind up in a situation where you can't get back out of the water. Something else to consider between cold water kiting and summer kiting is, we have this rule that you should never tack out further than you're willing to swim back in. And this just is compounded in the winter. So you have to think, if something goes wrong and you're a pier's length out or so, sometimes it can take 30 minutes to get back in from a self-rescue. So don't allow that to happen. Don't tack out so far that you couldn't get back in quickly. I advocate not really going out very far at all. A small tack out, small tack in. Play it safe, because even with a good wetsuit, hypothermia can still set in, and there's a limited time that you could really be on the water and stay safe. So all that said about assessing the situation and just asking yourself some questions to see if you're prepared to get in the cold water. What constitutes cold water? When does kiteboarding cross over from being, fun and safe to a little more adventurous? And I would say consider the 50-50 rule. And what I mean by that is, typically if the air temperature and the water temperature adds up to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, then chances are it's safe to go. For example, if the water is 40 degrees and the air is 60 degrees, you're good. Or if the water is 30 degrees but the air is 70, you would be good. Truth be told, in modern times, it's probably more like they need to add up to 70 or 80 degrees. Like Logan mentioned in the beginning of the video, I think the air was 40 degrees and the water was in the 30s, and those boys are sweating. So with modern equipment, you really can push it, but it just comes down to being safe and being mindful of what gear you're using. Wetsuits usually have like a temperature chart for what they're made for and how thick of the wetsuit is, so just pay attention to that. What this comes down to is just being mindful of what gear you have, how properly prepared you are, and back to that situational awareness, right? So if you're out there and you're shivering, probably don't go. So moving on to the gear. In the summertime, all you really need likely is your kiting equipment, some sunscreen, a pair of board shorts, or maybe a thin wetsuit, and you're good to go. But in the winter, it takes quite a bit more. So, you're wearing usually a full wetsuit, a hood, mittens, boots, a thermal layer. There's a lot of things that you can use to get out there, and different options, different thicknesses. And I actually grabbed some gear, and I'm just going to run over some of the things that you could use to get on the water. So when kiting in cold water, you're going to want a good thick wetsuit, and I would say start with a minimum of say like a 5'4". So I have the NP Combat here, and this is a suit that I'm currently using. And, you know, I've taken this out in as cold as probably 35-degree water, maybe 40, and this gets the job done. And you could even go a bit further. So another option might be like a 6'4" with a built-in hood. So here I have a 6'4" NP wetsuit with a built-in hood. It's a front zip. So you can see that this suit, it's just going to be a bit warmer. There's more materials in the suit. You're going to get less flush with the built-in hood. So this is a great option, and I would advocate going for something in the 6 range with a built-in hood when you're getting out in those colder waters. And even a front zip is going to help keep you a bit warmer. Every little step you can take to stay warmer makes a big difference in those colder days. And something else that I like to do, whether you're using a 5'4" or a 6, is pair this with Thermalite. So all Thermalite is, it's pretty similar to like thermal underwear. It's just made for the water. So you can see just putting on the bottom and the top here underneath your wetsuit, it's going to help. It's going to make a big difference and just help you keep your body heat while you're out there having fun. And these are actually useful too, even in the summer. You can wear these, you know, under some of your layers if you don't want to do a thick wetsuit. And if your wetsuit doesn't have a built-in hood, you're going to want to just get an additional hood. You can see there's some extra material here. This just fits into your collar here, and again, it's just going to help with the cold. A built-in hood, it's going to be warmer, but this is going to make a difference when you're getting out in the colder days. Aside from protecting your head, you're going to need some gloves when you're on the water to keep your fingers warm, and there's a lot of options from, say, 5-finger gloves to mitts. Personally, I prefer the claw, the 3-finger claw, and what that is, it's a mitt, but you have a liberated pointer finger, and you know, you get the benefits of the additional warmth of a mitt, just like a regular ski mitten, but it's kind of nice when you're setting up your lines, or you need to mess with your harness, or just any other little thing you might need to do, you know, use your keys to get into your car. I like to have the liberated pointer. So the last piece of equipment that's an absolute must when you're riding in cold water is a pair of good booties. So you can see here that I just have some NP 5mm missions, you know, and you can do anything from 5mm, 3mm to even 2mm booties. Obviously, the thicker you go, the warmer you're going to be. And what's nice about these is they do have some padding on the bottom, so that's good when you're walking on rocks or shells or whatever it is that you have to walk over at your local beach. But one problem with these is you do lose a bit of connection to your board. So if you're a surfer, for example, or maybe you kiteboard wearing boots, you might want to consider getting a pair of like 2 or even 3mm neoprene socks. And you know, it's pretty similar to these, but there's just no rigidity to it. There's no reinforcement on the bottom, so they're not going to be nearly as durable when you're walking, but you're going to get a better connection to your board, and you could actually fit them into your boots. But for most of you out there, these are fine. I surf with these. I don't mind it personally, and I enjoy having the extra padding and durability. So hey guys, I hope you found this week's video helpful. You know, it was a bit of an impromptu topic, and the takeaway here is that kiteboarding in the summer, it's fun, but kiteboarding in the winter, it's an adventure. And you know, if you'd like to learn more about winter kiteboarding and just getting out in cold weather or snow kiting or anything like that, we actually have quite a bit of articles written on that. So I'm going to include a link on cold water kiting and what you need to know in this video in the description, and as well at the end of this video I'm going to put in a link to just check out some of the cold water gear. So whether you'd like to learn more or you just need to gear up to get out in the colder water, make sure you give those a click and just explore all the good content we have on our website. And hey, if you enjoyed this week's video, please give it a like and don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next Wednesday.